Chapter 5. The Ending. The days after the storm felt different, as though the city itself had shifted ever so slightly. The air was clearer, washed clean, the sea calmer, the streets shining as if polished by rain. For Adrian and Elena, something invisible but undeniable had changed. The unspoken fear that had lingered between them was no longer a barrier but a shared truth. They had not solved everything that night. Love does not erase fear in a single moment, but they had made a choice to face it together. It began in small ways. Adrian stayed. When the gallery in another city called again, offering him an opening date, he hesitated. He sat with Elena at the harbor cafe, the paper in his hands trembling slightly. "You should go," she said quietly. His eyes lifted sharply. "Do you want me to?" "I want you to have what you've earned," she replied, her tone steady though her heart pounded. "But I don't want to lose you." Adrian folded the letter, slipping it back into his pocket. "Then I'll bring it here. If they want my photographs, they can see them in the city I belong to." Her breath caught, her eyes widening. "You mean that?" He reached across the table, taking her hand. "I do." The relief that washed over her was almost painful in its sweetness. For the first time, she felt the ground beneath her feet steady. Elena, too, began to let him in. She invited him into her music not just as a listener, but as a witness to her struggles. Instead of hiding her frustration, she let him see it. The long hours, the broken phrases, the drafts torn apart and rebuilt. And when she played for him, no matter how imperfect she thought it was, Adrian listened as though it were the most beautiful thing in the world. "You don't have to be perfect," he told her once, brushing his fingers along the piano's worn wood. Her eyes softened. "And you don't have to run." They both smiled, knowing how far they had come from the nights when silence and fear had spoken louder than love. The city itself became their witness. They walked its streets with new eyes, not as two people circling each other, but as a pair who had chosen to share the same path. They revisited old places, the market where they had first laughed over figs, the cliff where the dawn had turned the sea to fire, the station cafe where fate had introduced them. Each spot felt transformed, layered with memory and meaning. One evening, as lanterns flickered on, Adrian led Elena to the old square where musicians often gathered. A group was already playing. Violins, guitars, a singer with a voice that carried like silk through the night air. "Dance with me," Adrian said suddenly. Elena laughed, glancing around. "Here? Now? Why not?" Before she could protest, he took her hand and pulled her gently into the square. Others joined, couples spinning beneath the lights, strangers swaying together. Adrian held her close, clumsy but determined, and Elena found herself laughing, her head tilted back, her worries dissolving into music and movement. "You're terrible at this," she teased. "And yet you're still here," he countered, grinning, "only because I don't want to embarrass you." But her smile betrayed her, wide and luminous. The months passed, and both their worlds grew. Adrian's exhibition opened in the city, drawing crowds to the small gallery by the sea. His photographs of strangers hung on the walls, but at the center was a series he called Elena. Each frame captured her in different lights, laughing in a cafe, lost in music at the piano, gazing out at the harbor, her hand reaching toward his. Visitors paused longest before those images. Some asked if she was a model. Adrian only smiled and said, "She's the reason I finally stopped moving." Elena, in turn, performed her first major recital in the old concert hall, now restored with funds the city had raised. The seats were filled, the chandeliers gleaming once more. Adrian sat in the front row, his camera resting unused in his lap. When Elena played, the hall seemed to breathe. Her music was no longer just notes. It was a story of doubt and longing, of storms weathered and fears faced, of love chosen and held. And when the final chord faded, the silence that followed was not empty but sacred, filled with awe. Adrian's eyes shone as he rose with the others to applaud. He did not photograph her that night. Some moments, he realized, were meant to be lived fully, not captured. To the inner monologue. Adrian. I thought love was a fleeting thing, like a photograph, beautiful, but gone the moment you blink. But she taught me it can be more, not just a moment, but a home, a place to return again and again. Inner monologue, Elena. I thought love was fragile, something that would vanish if I held it too tightly. But he showed me it could be strong, not because it was perfect, but because we chose it every day, even through the storms. On their anniversary, not marked by dates, but by the memory of a rainstorm in a train station cafe, Adrian took Elena back to the very spot where they had first met. The cafe looked the same, warm against the sea's chill, the windows misted, the shelves still crowded with books. They sat by the same window, their hands entwined. Outside, the rain began again, soft and steady, as if the sky were repeating an old story. "Do you ever think about that day?" Elena asked softly. "Every day," Adrian replied. "And if you hadn't walked in?" He smiled, his thumb brushing over her hand. "Then I'd still be searching. And I'd never know that the most beautiful photograph is the one you don't take, the one you live." Her eyes shimmered and she leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. Outside, the storm sang its familiar song. Inside, two hearts beat steady, not in perfect harmony, but in chosen rhythm. And beneath the same sky that had once brought them together, Adrian and Elena remained. Not as strangers, not as fleeting moments, but as a love that had endured, a love they had fought for, a love that was theirs. The end of the fifth and final chapter, and if you like this story, subscribe and like this video so you don't miss more such relationship stories. Thank you for watching. See you in a new relationship story.